Hello, travelers. My name is Grace Simmons, and this is the Random and Wonderful podcast. Settle in and listen to stories of wanderlust and transformation as you gain tips to inspire your next travel experience. The Random and Wonderful is brought to you by the Amethyst Palava Hut, LLC. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Random and Wonderful. Today, my guest is Edwin Covarrubias. How'd we do?
It was spot on. That's perfect.
Welcome, Edwin. I'm so happy to chat with you again.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here. You're
also a podcast movement person that I met for the first time. And so we got to talking about our different interests. And of course, travel popped up and I got really excited. So Edwin has a really cool story. But first, Edwin, please tell us about yourself, who you are, what you do, and then we'll dive into the travel stories.
Well, from the very beginning, I actually started studying engineering. And then somehow down the road, I took a trip and I went down to Peru. And since then, I started trying to figure out some way to keep it going and work online. Tried a bunch of things. And eventually, I got to launch a podcast and that podcast failed. But then 5 years after that, or 4 years later, I launched another one in the field of paranormal and creepy storytelling. So that show took off. Then I launched another one, a second one, and then a third one. And they've all done pretty well. And that's my full-time thing now. So now when I travel, I have like my own setup and I travel like that working. So the hardest thing is to find quiet places to record. But I make it work, even if it's middle of the night, early in the morning. But yeah, that's what I've been doing, like a podcast business. And also I have, a small shop for notebooks that I sell online on Amazon, and all these things are managed remotely. So been making it work that way. But I love traveling, and I've been to a few places. Actually, a few months ago, we took a trip to Southeast Asia. I wasn't by myself this time. We went to all the, Thailand, South Korea, Philippines, a bunch of little, the countries that everybody does and everybody sees. But it was fun. It was fun. And now I am like 100% tolerant of the heat and humidity. It doesn't bother me. I might start sweating and I don't mind it because it's completely normal over there.
Yeah.
But yeah. And how we met was over the Camino de Santiago talk, which was the thing that we did exactly a year ago. I would have been starting exactly last year.
Oh, that's so cool. Oh my goodness. This wasn't even planned. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Really cool.
Very nice. Cool. So before we get into that, I'm wondering, while your job allows you to move around, do you plan your travel around your work, or is travel like, I can work while I travel?
That's a really good question, because the very, very first trip that I took by myself down, backpacking, like actual backpacking, trying to figure out how I'm going to do this or whatever, I met a girl and I actually ended up following her to Ecuador. Like she went to Ecuador, then I'm like, I want to go too. So then I went. Next thing you know, we've been together for up until now, and this was like 8 years ago. So now, if it were just me, I would probably plan around work and be like, oh, well, there's these creepy stories in so-and-so, and I'm just going to go and just go up into whatever town, whoever wants to tell me a story, and travel that way. But now it's more like we have to compromise and say, okay, well, I want to go here. It's like, okay, fine. But I also want to go here. It's like, all right. Or like, I want to stay longer here because a routine, like it's going from hotel to hotel. You're like calling, checking for the internet speed. And, like if it's quiet around there off of Main Street. So like, I mean, there's a lot of compromise that way. So it's like a 50-50 thing. Like, I feel like I want to make it work because of my job, like what I get to do, which is storytelling. But there's also that part where it's just like, okay, I'm going to go there and I'm going to just adjust also. Also, the thing with taxes and being out of the country, like out of the U.S., would be a thing that now I'm going to start considering too, where like I have to count my days. I've been sorting it out.
Yeah.
That way it's like you're like somewhere else. Your taxes aren't completely U.S. based. Like you have to be outside of the country for a certain time. So it's getting a little more complicated in that sense. Yeah.
That's definitely something that I don't think people consider, especially when you're working and like working remotely, but like, the digital nomad world where if you're just traveling, you're like, oh yeah, I like this hotel. It's close to these locations. Meanwhile, you're like, I need to check the internet speed. I need to make sure I can actually have some quiet when I need to record. How do I time my recording? So there's a couple other things that you have to think about that I guess people don't really consider.
And also the little hacks you figure out, like You know, when you get to a hotel and they give you that little, it's not really a stool, but it's like where you put your luggage on, that little table-y thingy. I don't know what it is. Like, I had to do a setup one time where, like, I literally put it on top of the table and a blanket to make a little sound booth type of thing, where, like, so it won't echo back and forth. And cutting out whenever, you know, somebody passes by with their talking on their phone or running down the hall. So, yeah, it takes some struggle. But now, you know, like, in some places where you go that are cheaper, sometimes you can get, for example, an Airbnb or a hotel with like a smaller subsection, like a little smaller area. So Airbnbs for me are like, if I look for a place with 2 bedrooms or like a room with like a small laundry room or something where I can go in there and close the door, and also check for layouts if they're not like facing the outside, you know, like the exterior.
Or next to the elevator,
yeah. Yeah, or something like that. Yeah. But yeah, little hacks you figure out here and there, like how to plug things in when the outlet doesn't reach. Oh yeah. A ton of stuff, but you get used to it. You get used to it.
Adapting too. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So what exactly is your balance when it comes to picking? So if you're working, do you actually have time then to enjoy the travel?
You know what? Whenever there's peaks, like for example, when I have a lot of projects that are due, like there are things that, because I don't work by myself anymore, right? Like, so I send things to sometimes an editor, or somebody's requesting something like an ad read, for example. That's the most common thing. Those things pile on like one after another. Usually, you know, like near the end of the year, sponsorships go big and there's a lot of back and forth all the time. And I know that it's definitely more stressful, and I have to fight against, like, try at least to get out and not be in the room working the whole time. Not because I want to, but because I have to. And it's hard, you know, like sometimes you're literally, I don't know, it could be like by a cool pool or like by just the coolest little park, and you're on your phone, like replying to things. That gets stressful, but I know that now, at least like I've been practicing it on my own, like while I'm at home, to discipline myself and be like, okay, hold on, like, you need to work from this time to this time. Stop checking Facebook. Stop checking Twitter. Stop like going on, you know, all these other things and YouTube videos on whatever. Even procrastinating by organizing my desk, which is a very thing that I do when I don't want to write. And I think practicing, getting all those things done does free you up to do more things. So, I mean, it's a thing I'm working on. I'm going to be testing it more out, because I know that when we were traveling this time, I was like, you know what, I'm going to wake up early and I'm going to do my things. And yeah, it actually freed me up for a lot. So I realized that I do have a lot of time. It's just poorly managed, you know. Like I stretch it out.
Lessons learned, right?
Yeah. It's terrible, but we're working on it. We're working on it.
Good. Yeah. All right, so let's get into the Camino pilgrimage. Is that a fair way to?
I guess you could call it that. Yeah. I mean, it's different for a lot of people. But let me look up I just lost the site that I had open just so that I could remember the name. I was telling you earlier before we started recording. I was like, what are these towns called? But yeah, I think I would call it a pilgrimage. For me, it was probably like an adventure, I would call it. But yeah, people normally call it the pilgrimage, the Camino de Santiago pilgrimage.
Camino de Santiago. So what is it? How did you get into it? And it is a pilgrimage. How long does that take?
Oh, I mean, people can take as long. I mean, I've heard people do it in 23 days. Other people take 60 days, 2 months. A common thing is around a little over a month, like a few days over a month. But basically it's going to sound strange to people who might have, probably never heard of it. But it's basically a walk across the northern part of Spain, where you start from typically like from outside Spain, like in France. And from a place called, I started from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. So it's like the more traditional place to start, I guess, for the French, what they call the French route. And then you just go down, like walking all the way across until you get to the Santiago de Compostela place, like the cathedral. And people like to hang out there and like for a little bit after their pilgrimage is over, and then continue to what they call is a Finisterre. It's not on the map here, but it's like they call it like the end of the world, I guess. So it's like you reach the ocean. So you literally walk all the way across Spain.
Right.
And yeah, but I mean, it's just because, you walk an extra, days, but it's really cool. It actually has a really cool history. I wish I knew more, but like, I can't consider, I'm not an expert on this at all. So I can't like say that everything's going to be like completely factual here. But the story goes like that there was an apostle of Jesus that walked across there and pretty much ended up, and his remains are at, right here, is the Santiago de Compostela Cathedral. So it has a strong significance, I think, to a lot of Catholic people. But when you're there, you're going to see so many people from so many walks of life. Like, you see Buddhists, you see Jews, you see like just an unbelievable amount of people that they do it basically to like, some are there on a journey for themselves, like an inner type of discovery. Like, I've met this man who had lost his wife, and he was a really old man in his 80s, and he was walking across the country, like, in her honor. Also met a couple who was just from Australia. They just wanted to do a thing, and they do it every year, and that's what they do. And also you see families, you see kids, you see people from Spain that are also walking, like they have time off and they walk a certain section, then they go back to work, then the next break they get, they continue from where they left off and walk more, and then they go back. That's what they're doing, yeah. But it's a beautiful like thing that honestly I went in without any knowledge of what it was necessarily. I had seen a movie called The Way, just to kind of get like to see like, is this how it's gonna be? And then I remember watching other like mini documentaries on YouTube about it, and they all had like people document their own experiences as they're walking across. And I mean, I heard a couple of some stories of people that gave up. They're just like, I can't do this. But that's kind of like, there's a lesson in that too, right? It's like, oh, you couldn't finish because you hurt yourself, and you really do. It's a tough physical thing to do. I mean, walking across a country, it's like what I think is like almost 800 kilometers or something. It's like it's a lot. It's a lot. It's a very long distance. You walk for 6 hours, 8 hours, depending on how fast you go, a day, and then you get to a certain area. I mean, I can get into the details later on, but your question was about like how I found out about it, and this was through some of the Paulo Coelho books, which like The Alchemist and some of the other, like he has a book. I want to know what hold on, let me see if I can find the book quickly. Paulo, he's a Brazilian author. He writes in Portuguese. Is he from Portugal or Brazil? I think it's called, The Pilgrimage. That's what the novel's called. And that's how I first heard about the Camino. And the experience of it was, I mean, magical in its own way, right? Like for me, not like as they describe it, where like, oh, you have to do a quest or whatever, and like some magic discovery. And not necessarily like that, but there's definitely something that goes on, and something that draws you, like, you just want to go back. Like for me, I just want to go back. And like, I think I told you when I met you, I was like, I hated every second of it while I was walking.
That was it.
And I just want to do it again.
As you describe this entire story, you're like, I just want to do it again.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
Yeah. It's a thing, like, I swear to you, I think about it every day. I think about it every single day since. And not so much that I felt like, it was a transformation or, anything like that. But it was just like, literally my whole task was to get to the next town and find a place to stay. Like, that was a task. So when you can concentrate on that, and also for me, I still took my laptop. Like, I was still getting to places and had to record sometimes. And in the end, I ended up like, that failed. That plan didn't work, and I don't recommend it. I think we should, if you do that kind of work, you should probably work ahead, or like really schedule your time before, like work way ahead, get ahead of your work, and try to actually take some time off, because I know that it really kind of, I don't know, held me back a little bit, I feel. So I was stressed out during the whole thing. So not during the whole thing, but like while I, had stuff to do, I'm like, I need to get there early. I need to finish this, or I'm too tired to like read or revise anything. And that was tough, very tough.
Were there any points of this journey where either like a story that kind of stuck with you, or an experience, because it was, you were going through it, an experience that really stuck with you or kind of stood out to you on your pilgrimage?
There's a few things. When I start thinking about the Camino again, I always find like a new little snippet of something that happened, and I'm like, I remember this. Like, for example, right? Like, there's one. This was around the second day. This is me still walking with my girlfriend. Like, so we're both, by the way, this is a whole topic unto itself, like doing a very tough, frustrating trip with somebody, and how you learn how you get along with each other in times like that. But anyway, we were walking down, I think it was the second day, or getting into the third day, and there were talks like in the, the hostels, the albergues, they call them, like the places where you stay for very low cost, like 12, 13 euros. And they were saying that it's going to rain. Like, it's raining. I hear there is a lot of rain, and we might have to like hang out here for a little bit longer. But you just kind of hear that, like rumors, right? Like, yeah, it's raining. Like, but there's people like us, we were new to the whole thing. We're like, well, make it. It's fine, right? And as we're going, like the sky looks clear, we're walking, climbing up a hill, and then we have to make our way down this really steep hill. It's like jagged rocks. It's a dangerous area, I guess. But right as we're heading up, like the rain starts, and it's like this stream at first that's just kind of coming at you, and you're walking against it, and you're like, this is weird. You climb up, it kind of meets another little river, little creek, and then it's just going all the way down. So like by this time, it's no longer a stream, but it's like, it feels like a river. Like it's going up to like halfway up to your knees, sometimes to your knees. Like, and by the way, this is already dangerous, right? Like there's jagged rocks there. People slip and fall. Actually, there's people that did fall. And there was this man who was walking behind us with the sticks. He's older, and he's like, he just starts singing. Like, I'm singing, or it's like, I'm singing in the rain.
Yeah,
singing in the rain. And I follow along, like, automatically. They were both singing, and we're like, da, 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 you know how this whole song goes. And he's like, buen camino, and he keeps walking, right? We meet him up again, like, closer to, like, when we're working our way down, and he's there walking slowly, coming down with his walking sticks. And we're like, hey, like, we're kind of doing this thing where, like, I get ahead, they get ahead. Like, you know, as in he gets ahead, we get ahead. And then as we're going, like, we're like, this is odd because, you know, we come prepared as much as we can, right? Like the shoes, for example, are waterproof, but not like river proof. Like,
right.
Yeah, so like you can't walk in a river, like, and everything, like, and yeah, it's non-slip shoes, but like, come on, these are like flat rocks, jagged. Like if you're gonna slip, if something's gonna happen, right? So also our ponchos, like everything was it just went bad. We're like, oh, what are we gonna do? And then we start seeing less and less people coming down. So it's just us basically all like going down this long hill. And I'm saying long, not just like, oh, you know, like the typical, you go on a day hike and you come down, but it's like hours of just, you know, making your way zigzagging down. And I remember at one point, like, of the frustration, you're just like, oh, like, what are we gonna do? My girlfriend and I look at each other and we're like, what the heck, right? Like, there's nothing else but except get there. Like, we just have to, and this is our very first, like, challenge, like a first, like, here we go, we have to get through this. And then we just kind of start like, you know, like smiling, like you're just going down, like, it's fine. It's just water. And the whole it's just water thing became a thing where we're just like, if it's raining, hey, it's just water. Yeah. And I mean, to her, I feel like it meant something else, like as in her own meaning. But for me, whenever there's like, I got that stuck where you have setbacks and you have things that are holding you back. And to me, I automatically just think like, it's just water. Like it's just, it's serving its purpose and it is what it is. And you can deal with it. Or even if you, like, if you're just exposed to the water, like it's just water. Like it's not poison coming on you, right? It's just water.
Right.
So it really, a big shift in perspective. That's the thing I literally thought of like today. Like I was thinking like, what can I talk about the Camino? And I thought of that. And I'm like, I hadn't thought of that since I did the Camino. And I know the water thing has always been there, but the story behind it is what little habits that I pick up here and there, I know that are related to what I experienced in the Camino, which are little things like that. And there's a lot more. Some about people that you meet. And for example, for me, there was a kind of a, not a struggle, but like a decision point where some people like to put their flags of their country on their backpacks. I always thought it was like kind of weird to do that, but I'm like, what flag would I put? Because for me, I was born here in the US and I grew up here, but my parents are Mexican. And I've always felt like here, I'm not like 100% like American. And when I go to Mexico, it's like just based on how I speak and how I, you know, culturally, there's a lot for me to learn there. So I don't feel like I'm Mexican, like even though I am, right? And I decided at one point, I'm just going to get 2 flags and I'm going to tie them to my backpack. And I did that, right? Like, why does that mean anything? And in thinking of the flags and like just actually from like tying them just on the side, I actually had them at the bottom so they're like really displaying. I would be walking and everybody that I would hear, you know, they wouldn't like say, hey, America or US or anything. They would say, Mexico, right? And I would turn around and I'd be like, hey, and then we just keep walking.
Oh, wow.
And then as I heard it several times. And like, we're like, Mexico. And like, yeah, Mexico. Like everybody kept saying, you know, Mexico, Mexico. So I don't know if that means anything, but it definitely, I brought it back like, hey, you can, like, you're still a part of it. Like people are still going to recognize that. And that's the flag that stands out to them. And next thing you know, like in my mind, I'm already set for moving to Mexico City. Like I want to go there. And I worked on getting my dual nationality. So now I'm a citizen of both places. And it kind of, you know, it's like one of those things where like, does this have anything to do with each other? I don't know. But definitely there's some weird connection there, right? Like,
yeah.
maybe not quite a coincidence.
But the demonstration of you having both flags also connects to what became you deciding to get your dual citizenship. So instead of having to choose, you are both.
Yeah. There we go. See, like that's little things like that. Like
that's so neat.
You connected it really well. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
That's incredible. So tell me more about like some of the people that you encounter. Were there lessons? Did anyone... I love, first off, going back to the gentleman who was walking by you all and inspired you guys to sing through the rain, which is music and singing is such a beautiful way to ground and center you, especially when you're in the middle of a very difficult situation. And to have someone outside do that. Were there any other people maybe that taught you a lesson or that you kind of took something away from?
There were a few things that I know. For example, one of them was my girlfriend had blisters, right? Like they were big blisters, and she didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do, and we were trying to figure it out online to see, hey, what are we supposed to do when we get blisters? Because you're gonna have to keep walking, and this could get infected if you don't do it right. So we get to one of the albergues, and this one guy just helped us out, like as in completely just selfishly, like as in he gave us the materials, he gave us a little bit of, the thing that we needed, as many bandages as you need, here's what you do. And like he wasn't grossed out about it, even though, you're talking about foot blisters. This is like, but he like taught us everything. And we kept encountering him. And every single time we would see him, we would remember, like, it would be like, hey, how's your feet or whatever. And it was just like one of those things where like, and he was a fast walker. Like he would start late and get there early. Like this was, you see a lot. For us, we would start early and get there late. It was just like but we enjoyed our time like stopping by what they call the bares, which are like cafeteria, like little shops where you buy bread and sandwiches and, all the delicious Spanish bread and ham and everything that you get there. But it was so good. That was one of the people that I know really stood out to me. But there was one really interesting story. We had met this guy, this man at, I don't remember exactly when we first encountered him, but we started talking, just like you do, like when you're walking. And it was funny because we had kind of lost track of each other. Like, you meet people, they kind of stay in a certain place or they speed up and you lose each other. So you don't know when the last time that you talk to them is going to be. So we're getting to this place, and it's I can't believe I don't have this written down to remember exactly the town, but it was all these towns were very beautiful, but this one was old. It had that like old vibe to it, the stone buildings, stone road, like, the roads where you walk on. And we got to the reservation we had made through Airbnb. Actually, that thing saved our lives. And because, I don't even know if it's 100% legal there. It probably is, but maybe just not very well liked by the locals. But we got to this place, and we're like searching, like zigzagging through the little town, the city, to get to this Airbnb. And we're like right outside, there's this machine, like a vending machine, which has sandwiches and food and little, Coke, which is like, I don't like drinking Coca-Cola, but man, when you've been walking all day and it's cold and you're like, oh, I want that. And it was there, right? So we're struggling. And I remember my girlfriend and I were like, okay, let's get this thing out or whatever. One of the things kind of gets stuck. It's a funny story to me. It's not funny to anyone else. But like my girlfriend puts her hand into the vending machine and she's like, can you help me? But what she meant is to help her with her backpack. And I think that her hand is stuck. So I pull her and she's like, no, like with my bag. And I'm like, oh, right at that time. What is that grace? We're struggling with the vending machine, right? And then this guy that we had met earlier was walking like through the city too. Like he was walking up toward us. And he's like, hey. And we're like, hey, like, how are you? Or whatever. Because he sees like we're like laughing, kind of like fighting this machine. We're like, what's going on? And he's like, he looks like he's kind of worried. And also he's walking with someone else, with this other guy. And he's like, have you found a place to stay? Because we don't know what we're going to do. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like you searched around? This is a very common thing that I can tell you about later, but he was really worried. And I'm like, no, I mean, we're staying here. I can ask, right? And by the time we had already rang the doorbell, so somebody was on their way down while we were fighting the vending machine. And this woman comes down, opens the door like barely, and she's like, hola, and we're like, hey, we have a reservation. Do you happen to have any extra rooms? Because they're looking. And then she's like, yeah, I do. And she's like, well, how much are they or whatever? And she's like, oh, it's, so-and-so, I don't know, 20 euro each or 30 each or whatever. And he's like, okay, let's take it, because they had no choice. Because, and by the way, when you're struggling to find a place to stay, it's like they go from place to place to place, and everybody leads them around in a circle. And sometimes there's 0 beds anywhere in that town, so you have to keep walking. The other option is to like sleep outside, which I didn't see anybody doing, but I know that some people had tents with them just in case. It's a thing. But anyway, they did find a place to stay. And they were, like, you could see the relief in both of their, like, they weren't friends. They had met each other walking, but, like, they weren't friends. And they had to share a room, which was, obviously, they were happy about it either way. Like, they would have just slept in the living room if it were just up to them. Like, they would do it. But they managed to get up there. And when we were talking, they're, like, soaking wet. It's, like, it's cold. It's just, you're disgusting after walking for so long. You're sweaty. You're, like, salty. It's just, like, this. It's not good, but I think people that have done the pilgrimage, like, they kind of get it. It's just like, hey, this is how it is. It's fine. And we're just talking about how the 2 people that were walking up were not finding a place to stay, and that they were worried about having to sleep under one of the bridges. And they said, we just happened to find you, like, right at that moment. Now, when I thought about it, immediately I'm connecting, like, we rang the doorbell. The lady was taking a bit, and we were fighting the vending machine, which is what held us back, right? We were like, had we just gotten our things, gone inside, we would have missed them, because they left like, they would have just passed right by us. This didn't have like a hotel sign or like a hostel or anything on it. It was just no signage, just a building with a big wooden heavy door. So they would have just walked right past us. And they're like, yeah, like, why were you outside? Like, at that time, we're like, oh, and then we tried to explain that we were fighting, like, I thought, and then we just explained it, and then they started laughing, and we're like, oh, it was just one of those moments where you're like, sharing a story, like, didn't mean anything to anyone else except for us, because of the timing of it. Just worked out for them, and we got to do it, unintentionally got to help someone out. So, and it was the lady's house that really helped them, the lady that helped the other people. But, like, it felt like, oh, it was a team effort of, like, they spotted us. Had also they didn't know who we were, they might have just kept going, but we happened to have met them before. So it's one of those things that you're just like, are these coincidences? And the logical part of you wants to say, yeah, it's all a thing. But then you meet other people that, for example, this man who was in front of a church, he was standing there, and I'm looking at him. This is near the end of the Camino, like about a week before we finish. And he's looking at me, and I'm looking at him kind of like from outside of the church property. And he kind of waves at me, like, come over. And normally I wouldn't do this, but I'm like, hey, and I told Carla, my girlfriend, and I'm like, I'm going to go talk to him. She's like, okay. So I leave my backpack and I walk up, and he's like, how are you? And I kind of start talking like, oh yeah. He's like, what's your reason for doing the Camino? And I'm like, I feel like I'm barely discovering that now, and now that it's almost over. And just saying that, I'm like, wow, I didn't know what I was doing, but now I feel like there is something that I need to work through. And I'm like, I feel like there is something there, though, that I need to work through in my life, or like really meditate on and think about. And he's like, I can tell. He's like, look. And then he started kind of telling me a little bit about what his adventure and like his life, which was he had done the Camino, liked it so much that he went back home to sell all of his stuff, and then just moved to Spain. Now he lives there and runs groups for the people that want to do the Camino and for religious reasons. And I mean, he was already, retired, so he had that time and I guess the energy to do it too, because the Camino is just, you meet a lot of people, and that's kind of what he wanted to do. And he was obviously a very good communicator. But thinking of that, I'm like, in real life, like what I call it now, like for me now, if somebody says, hey, come here, like I probably wouldn't do it. I'll probably just be paranoid and be like, I'm okay, and then keep walking, because you have your backpack with all your stuff. So, but it was little snippets here and there, and the more I speak, the more I remember these things, where I'm like, I also met this other guy. Like so many little things that I'm like, this was much more than just like a regular vacation. And it's, I would say, a little embarrassing to say it that way for a lot of people. Like, if you, all I want to talk about is a Camino sometimes. Like, it's just like, I want to talk about where people went, what they ate, what they didn't like, how long it took them to get from a place to a certain place to a certain place. But you're kind of alone in it because not a lot of people understand it. Even if they do get it, they're limited if they haven't experienced it. But every once in a while you meet travelers who are like, oh wow, like that sounds like something I would like to do, and they ask you all these questions, and they don't find you annoying for just blabbing all about the Camino whenever you get the chance. But I know that it definitely, I mean, I'm discovering now too that it really changed my life.
That is absolutely amazing, and it's beautiful. I like that your transformation story, like there are little points that continue to come up for you, even though overall, like I think when you told me about it the first time, what you said was it was magical. And now as we're talking about it, like there's still more pieces and parts that you're learning about yourself. You're learning that like during that entire journey, you and your girlfriend were able to bond. Someone has literally said, before you marry anyone, make sure you go on a road trip with them to see how they handle.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the Camino is the king of all road trips, especially since you're walking that. My goodness. You mentioned a little bit about how you all were able to get your food, but like, how do you plan for this? Like, do you measure, how long it'll take you to get there? Walking speed to reserve, like you all reserved an Airbnb, but how do you plan your journey?
There's a few ways. Like, I know some people have like the guidebooks, right? That just tell you at this town, you're going to find this thing. In this other town, you find this thing. Or this place is really big, so you're definitely going to find a place to stay. Or, hey, call ahead because this place is small. For us, there was an app that really, I don't even know if I still have it installed, but I mean, I can send you the name of it later. But it's app, like a guide type of app for your phone. And it tells you literally how long it's going to take you, elevation, how high you're going to climb. Tells you, like, you can even start connect with other people that are doing going to be there at the same time. But definitely like logistics wise, there's a lot of people that are doing the Camino now, or from what I heard, people that compared to years past, like now it's just growing in popularity. So there's a lot less beds to go around. You have to reserve your spots way before, like as in a couple of days. So you do have to plan as to where you're going to be. What we did was we would, for example, if it's Monday, we would say, okay, where are we going to stay on Wednesday? So that Monday morning, we're like trying to figure out where we're going to stay. And then we already know. Now, it doesn't feel as like legit doing that, right? Because you're not going like where the wind takes you. You're not like, oh, I'm going to stay here for the night or whatever.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, we did risk it as to give us that opportunity to say, hey, let's just take it slow. Let's stay here and we'll figure out the next thing tomorrow. And we would do that just because we're tired, or, hey, we can't continue. Like, I'm done, or it's getting dark and we're going to have to cross through a forest or whatever. And you choose. You're like, okay, no. You always know how far the next town is. Like, and they're not just like the main towns that are listed in the maps. There's in between little small towns. So like, you always know. It's like, oh, it's 6 kilometers ahead, or it's 5. And the typical thing is like you walk around for a little bit, I would say like a couple of kilometers, maybe 2, 3, you might start spotting signs of like civilization again, like a small town or something. Maybe after like a couple of hours, you find a place like where you can have breakfast in the morning, and you kind of trust that you're going to find a place, because there's a lot of people that do this, right? So little small businesses like have popped up, very small ones sometimes. And other times it's like full on like operations of like you show up and like there's a lot of tables and it's like a restaurant setup. And other times it's like literally like a little tent built out and somebody's serving you juice and Gatorade or whatever and bread with ham in it, and that's it. But you always know how far ahead like how much more you have to walk if you want to know, because some people don't want to know. They just want to keep going, and whenever they get tired, they stop. And some people do manage it that way, which is odd. And another thing also that kind of ruins the experience for some people is that you have to, for some of the places, like, what do you call it? Like albergues they run out of beds. They have a certain, like, you have to get there early and get in line because they won't have a reservation system. So you have to get there really early and you see a line. And then at one point it's like cut off and you can't stay there. So what they do is like they keep walking or go back to the previous town, which means another hour or so. Maybe 40 minutes of like with all your stuff going to another town and figuring it out that way. So what you end up seeing is people kind of rushing to get to the next spot, like racing, getting up really early, rushing to the next stop. So that's kind of like the downside of it, like the logistics, I feel. Because I don't think it was meant to accommodate, hundreds of thousands of people doing the thing all the time.
Yeah.
We used to do it with the app, mainly.
Is there a self-care practice that maybe you incorporated or maybe you learned on this journey that you use now when you travel?
Self-care, like in terms of, I guess both like physical and mental. There's things that I know out of habit that I do now. Like, for example, even just having the time to yourself early in the morning, for example, it's one of the things that I know I crave. Like I want the sunrise, and I didn't really understand why until I stopped the Camino, and you kind of miss it. You're like, it was so cool you're walking in the dark and you see the sunrise behind you, or in front of you, or next to you, or whatever. But I know that during those times, it makes you appreciate a lot of stuff. Like very grateful. Just it's another day. You get another chance. Here you go. I don't think a lot of people that do the Camino consider it a lesson from the Camino, because you can do that pretty much anywhere. But I know that space to myself in that morning, or just being able to have that time, designated time to say thank you, and like to yourself, like even just, hey, I made it. I woke up this morning. I don't really think about it as much as I did in the Camino, but I know that I made a practice out of it to try to really be conscious of like, hey, I woke up and here we go. Let's do what we can today. That's one of the things, like it's a very like emotional kind of mental thing. But physically, I know that I discovered the benefits of walking and how our body adapts to everything. Carrying a heavy backpack. I mean, I have my laptop, clothes, water. Water's the heaviest thing. A lot of snacks sometimes. But even no matter like how much I would eat, and I'm saying like I would stuff myself, and I still started losing weight, getting to more like an actual, what I would consider like for myself, like a healthy weight for me that I would feel comfortable in. My clothes started feeling a little bit looser, a little bit better. Also, the exposure to the sun just made the skin really interesting, like an interesting color. I didn't know I could get more brown, but like it was like a cinnamony, I don't know, it's a weird color, but like you're like, you know how sometimes people say like, oh wow, you're glowing. It's not necessarily like you look great, but like as in your body's doing something. Like, hey, you're sweating all day, you're drinking a bunch of water, you're eating fruits from trees that you're passing by. And by the way, this is not stealing, because these things are like all fall on the ground. Like people, I'm pretty sure they want you to take them, because they're like,
they leave it, yeah.
They start rotting on the ground, so like just take the apples or whatever. But yeah, like with all those things, I started realizing that there's a huge benefit. And I know we hear it all the time, but like it's true. And I feel like we need to get reminded all the time of how much we need to walk, because that's what we're made for. And if we can go, I used to tell, me and my girlfriend and I now we have a thing where we're like, well, nothing's far now. Like we can walk anywhere. It's like, that's true. Like we need to get to downtown. We'll walk. And it's like, okay, to go down the hill, we'll go walk down the hill. Like, it's not that big of a deal anymore to walk. And you just adjust. If it's too hot, wear lighter clothes. If it's cold, wear a jacket. And little things like that I'm like, this is a thing that everybody should be doing. And I feel like we don't walk a lot. At least I don't at all. Like maybe from here to the driveway and then get on the car and get somewhere else and get off and then walk a little bit and then come back to the car, right? So
yeah.
But yeah, little things like that I've picked up. And then there's other things too, skincare, which is a thing I never ever did. I think as a guy, it was very difficult for me to like say I need this also, but like sunblock, just sunblock, I guess, but also like not just any kind, but like a good kind that's not going to do more harm than good.
Yeah.
In terms of bug spray, there's things that are natural that you can use. And I'm not like in the whole like all natural organic thing. I mean, I know that some people are, and it's good that they do that. But for me, I'm just like, I think about convenience a lot. And there's little changes that you can do here and there that I know have made, for me at least, they make a huge difference. I've gained a bunch of weight since I finished, and that's because of I sit around all day working. But I know that once I start moving again, the body adapts to what you're doing, and you see it, you feel it, and it works, for whatever a person's goals may be. Yeah.
I always find that I think I walk a whole lot more when I travel. And like you said, you don't think twice about it. Like if I needed to walk around my neighborhood, I would set aside some time and hope that I, agree to that. Versus when you're traveling, you're like, oh yeah, this is a 30-minute walk. Sure, whatever. Well, one way, right? You don't think about it. But if you're to do that at home, you'd feel like, why would I walk? Absolutely not.
Yeah, I've been
So
seeing a
it's-
lot of reels about that where like, I guess this also the places where I walk around here, they're not very pretty places. Like they're just like the same sidewalks across the street. It's like very, I don't know. I always tell my friends that I don't think that these streets are meant for walkers, like for walking. Because I rarely see people walking. And like when you're crossing a street, like people look at you, you're like, what's this guy? Like he does, poor guy, like we should give him some bus money or something. Like it feels that way, even though it might not be true, But yeah, definitely. When you're traveling, you walk a lot without even realizing that you're doing it. Even activities that you end up doing, right? Hiking, going up the stairs for a picture or swimming or whatever. It's like you just do it. Yeah.
Like I need to get up to this little rooftop restaurant. I'm not thinking about the stairs, but let me try to do that here. I'm like, where is the elevator?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you adapt. I like that. Body always adapts.
It's cool to see how, because I mean, I remember thinking like we used to practice walking before getting to the Camino. It used to be like, oh, we're going to walk for, we're going to do 10,000 steps, 15,000 steps. And it's like, cool. And then we're getting used to that. Next thing you know, you're at the Camino, you're going up a hill in the Pyrenees, the mountains right off the bat, like the first day. And you're doing 30,000 steps. And you're like, oh, dang, like I should have practiced more, Yeah, because you don't practice with the backpack fully loaded on. Like you just, okay, I'm getting my 15,000. It seems like a lot, but then you do it and you're like, oh, no, this is and also the shoes that you choose. Like you don't pay attention to the shoes that you're using every day. And now, for example, I know that I can't use the same boots that I used to use. Like it's impossible for me to use the same things just because I'm going to feel pain after just a day of walking in those. And I realized that for me, for example, just in my case, it's the flat shoes, like as in not a lot of, I don't know what you call it, but like the shoes that don't have a lot of cushion.
Is
and
it like the barefoot feeling shoes?
Yeah, but it's not really, it's like a very, it's like barefoot shoes, but not really, because I've seen those. Those are very extreme and really weird looking, but I get them now. I understand. I haven't used them, but like I understand the purpose of even just like Vans or Chucks, like Converse that don't have any padding or whatever. Those feel better for me now than shoes that, put pressure on your feet, like in different areas. Yeah. But I mean, that's after walking. And also I think like, and my girlfriend always says this, that she feels like she went up a shoe size. And for me, I think it's the same thing. I didn't know this could happen. I don't know if it's true. I think it might just be that I feel more comfortable with a slightly bigger size. But I don't know.
There's something to be said about that though, because I think when I don't know what the actual science is behind it, but when you're wearing like certain type of shoes, your toes are so compressed, and if you start to wear the right shoes, like I think it's called like zero drop sole or something like that, where you're able to kind of spread your toes out and actually spread your foot, maybe. And after walking all that distance, probably, yeah.
Now that I think about it, I think the shoes that I wear now are wide. I don't know if they call it wide box or just wide. But I think that's the thing. Yeah. I think that's what bothers me about shoes. That the boots now, it's like I feel like I'm squeezed. Yeah. It's
I bought those type of shoes for Portugal because I read something about their cobblestone, and I was like, I don't want to be hurting going up and down. Going up and down on my travels. Yeah.
Now that you mentioned Portugal, they also have the Camino that starts from, they start from a bunch of different areas. Portugal has one, the Portuguese way, they call it. And you go up to the same spot, but from the coastline.
Okay.
So, and there's a lot of different ways to get it done. But yeah, those are common. So you might see some people walking, depending on if you're traveling there soon or if you already went there, you might have seen them already, walking with their backpacks and their sticks. They're doing the Camino. And
I feel
people
like
wear
now
this shell, like an identifier.
Attention, yeah.
Yeah. It's cool. It's cool. It's a cool, little thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, before we go, what advice do you have for someone who is traveling and they're trying to add a little bit more gratitude and acceptance? How do you help someone find a good perspective when they travel?
I feel like a lot of the people that travel, when they're basing it off of like Instagram posts or things that they see online or things that their friends are telling them to do or things that they saw like that, we miss out on a lot. And I feel like we get a whole, like a diluted thing of what the place really means when you see what everyone else has seen. But even if let's just say you're forced to do that, you're with a group and they want to hit all the Instagrammable spots and like, this is the way that you like to travel also. Let's just say that. There's always those stories everywhere. that, for example, the person you meet, the person at the hotel front desk, the person that's helping you with the luggage in case you have a lot that you carry. There's all these stories everywhere. And I think that when we pay attention to those, we get this tendency to like search for more of a story. And you might get some resistance from people like, oh, why are you going there? Or why do you want to see that? Or whatever. You kind of have that pressure to stay on track on the same thing. But I suggest you try it and you go where you feel like it's where you want to go. Like, it's not anything magical. You just kind of know, like, when something doesn't feel right, you're just like, this has to be something else. Or like, maybe I should have gotten some other type of food, or I don't want to eat here at this spot or whatever. Let's try it out. I feel like feeling scared or fear when you're traveling or afraid of getting off track a little bit really slows down like that aspect, that like finding out a new story, a new adventure, a new thing. So I would say like try it out. Do a thing that you haven't, done. And as far as like gratitude goes, I think that comes, to me at least, it came as a side effect of things. Like I don't feel like intentionally I wanted to be grateful. I feel like I just had to be grateful because heck, last night my feet were burning and this morning I can at least walk 3 steps without feeling like pain. Because as soon as it's a weird thing because you start warming up and you kind of feel it less. So there was a side effect. I had to be grateful because, hey, now I can walk. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Like it went over, the pain went away. So, but yeah, there's for me, it changes for me. Some people do it with intention. Like they're just intentionally trying to be grateful and they find it that way. For me, it was definitely a side effect. Like I was forced to. It's like, you see where you were yesterday. And I'm telling you, by the way, Grace, like there was a day when I couldn't get off I think I told you about this. Like I couldn't get off the bed. The lights stayed on, the window stayed open, and the door was unlocked. Neither of us could move. Like going to the bathroom was like, oh, I have to go. No, like I cried that day. Like I cried for not being able to get my clothes down off of a hanger thing that I had. I'm like, I need to get on this chair and I can't get on the chair. I can't do anything. And like, I literally felt like I'm a loser. I can't do this. And I cried. And I was like, after that moment, I'm like, you know what? Now that I can get up and do something, or I can walk, I can step, anything that you can do, it's just natural for me to be grateful about it. Like I can't help it because I already went through a bunch of things like that. Obviously, it's not that, I guess, dramatic, nothing like really terrible has happened to me there, but definitely little signs that tells you, hey, you remember where you were, look at where you are now, and be grateful for it. So once you finish the Camino, I think that's all you feel. You feel grateful, you feel accomplished, you feel like, wow, I did something. And you're grateful for everything, like even for yourself, to not let go, like to not give up on yourself, because really it's just you fighting against you. So, but yeah, like for people, try out things and then do hard things, try them out, see how they go, and you won't regret it. Yeah, they're there to help you power up and level up into whatever you're doing.
Nice. Well, Edwin, thank you so much. Before we go, please tell everyone what's next for you and where we can find you.
I do a lot for anybody who might be interested in like scary stories, for example, this is all the things that I do, and Halloween's coming up around this time of the year. And this is what I do all the time. So for me, my username on Instagram is Edwin Cove. That's EDWINCOV, as in Victor. People can find me there. I update about just little random things here and there, and I'm always moving. I'm actually planning a trip, and I'm leaving Sunday morning, going to Ecuador. That's where my girlfriend's from.
Nice.
And we're actually planning on finally tying the knots. So
yay!
It's a thing. Hopefully by the time this thing's up, I should be married. Dang it. Like we've been talking about this for years. But you can find me there. Yeah. And if you're interested in anything scary stories, my network's called Scary FM for anybody who might be interested. Ooh, that scared me.
Could not have been timed better.
But yeah, Grace, thank you so much. It was really cool to talk about this. I know I don't get the chance to talk about it often, so I really talked a ton. But I had a great time. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you sharing everything that you have. Thank you so much. Hey there, Grace here. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and gained some useful takeaways. Thank you so much for listening and staying until the end. Don't forget to rate the show or share it with some friends. Have a wonderful week. Take care. And remember, be bold, be curious, be ready to tell your story. You never know who needs it. Bye-bye.